So we're going to talk about setup and draw. If you don't know about them, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Then we are trying to draw some shapes, and then we will discuss variables and operators, and we talk about the mouse X and mouse Y. So first of all, we are going to talk about basics. So this is the login link, and I'm going to copy it, or Pooja, if you could copy it, it would be great. Like put it like in the chat just in case. I mean, the students have access to the slides already, but we're going to click on this and see what's going to happen. I already click on it, so I'm looking forward to click on it again, but I'm going to show you the file here. So this is the, where is it? Oh gosh, it should be here. There we go. So this is like the two cells. I'm going to create a new one because I want just you guys to see everything from the beginning. So we are going to import a Spark. And if you don't know what a Spark is, that's okay, because this is just a package that is prepared for this set of tutorials. So you don't need you need to worry about this. We just need to load them to make sure that we have things ready. And you're also going to do this percentage sign ignite, right? Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to do dev setup here. This is environment that we're going to use. So perfect. So what is this setup? So we are going to work on two things here: dev setup and dev draw, right? So I'm going to show the slides again to show you what's going to happen. Okay. With here. So these two lines put it already, right? And then we already press the this button, or I on my end did Shift and Enter. So this is like a shortcut. So you can just press Shift and Enter, and then you will see that it's like the cell is going to be run, right? And then you have to run this percentage ignite, and this cell is where we are going to write our program or our code, right? So we can use other cells, but we're going to write everything inside here because this is like the environment that is provided for us. So we are going to work with two things in this set of tutorials. One of them is setup, and this is the way that you should use it. So you use def, which is the short for definition, and the setup, which means that you are trying to define setup, right? But the thing here is that the setup is some sort of a function that is already written by some people before this session, right? So those people actually prepared a function setup for us that makes it easier to work with some sort of drawing and programming. So you don't need to worry about what setup is, but you can think of it just as a small notebook. So let's say I give you a notebook and I ask you to write your stuff there, right? So this dev setup is something like that. So this is like some sort of a setting for that notebook. So you can get a small notebook, you can get bigger notebook, and we will see how we can change the setting. So this dev setup is a way to manage the size of the window that we're going to use and other stuff, and we will see shortly. And your code starts here, and you can see here we have one single tab, right? So whenever you put the column and you hit enter, you should usually see the indent. If you don't, just press tab, okay? And this is what we call indent. So indent is like a term that we use in programming. And in Python, the way that you show that something is actually is written under a specific, for example, function or module, we have to provide an indent for it. Otherwise, the computer doesn't understand us. The other thing that I mentioned was draw. So as I said, the setup was just for the setting, and the draw is where we can draw stuff, right? We can create shape, we can like change its color and do some stuff here. Again, this, like you can see, the structure is the same. Again, we have the definition, draw, right? And then you don't have to provide anything inside these parentheses. We will talk about that later, but don't worry about it. And then we have like the code here, and as you want to increase like the number of like the lines, you have like to provide the indent and just go through it. Perfect. So let's go to print. So print is actually like, it's really straightforward. It just prints something, right? So now we're going to try this and see how it works. So let me go back to my notebook to explain that here. Perfect. So let me see if I can make it bigger. You know what? I'm going just to take it out and make it bigger. Perfect. So now here, I hope that you can see my screen very well. So I'm going to erase this for now, as we'll talk about it later in the slides. But now we want just to print something, right? So this is how the computer understands. You have to know what command you need to use, right? So if you know the basics of, for example, this programming language, then if you want like to learn, for example, another programming language, right? Let's say maybe C or Java, like these are other programming languages. Then, for example, you may need to see what kind of commands the computer understands if you want to use, for example, the programming language C, right? But in Python and in most like languages, we have the same thing. We have just print something, right? Print AU, right? And this drawing here is just because of like the internal, we have like the setup here, so don't worry about it. I can see if I can just get rid of it here. Okay, just on the drawing, so it always like do that, but that's okay. I'm going just to do it here for now, so to help you get some better sense. So this is just a new cell, okay? So for now, let's forget about the ignite, because I'm just going to show you like how the print works, right? So we use like the print AU, right? That's it. So this is how like the function works. So the function is something that you will see maybe a lot in the programming languages later. So we have something and we have open parentheses and you provide something here. And this is how it works. You provide some sort of input. So by the way, I'm not writing anything here. So this is not a code. This is just a way to explain to you guys that how the things work in programming. So you provide input to this function, for example, right? Print my input. And what you will see that you should see some sort of output. What is output here? The output is that you can see the term of the sentence on the screen, right? So this is the way to do it. And we can use single quotation or double quotation. And you may ask, okay, why should we use quotation? Because this is how the computer understands that you are saying that this is just a sentence that I want you to print out exactly. So I want just to give you some sort of sentence or some sort of like words, and I want you to just print that on the screen. That's it, right? But if you don't use it, for example, if I print hey, you print hey, but if I print hey, then you will see that it gives us an error. It says hey is not defined. And we will see that later, because if you don't put the quotation, like single quotation or double quotation, the computer doesn't understand that you are asking like it to print like a word or sentence. It thinks that this is just a variable. So we'll talk about that shortly. So we in this class prefer to use double quotation, and this is because sometimes you may want to, for example, provide a sentence that has apostrophe s, right? For example, this is let's say this is Julia's book, right? Or this is like my name. This is Nima's book. right? And this works. You can see the apostrophe here, right? But if you use single quotation, you see there is a problem. So that's why we usually prefer to use double quotation, which is more safe. Now, sometimes you may need to provide some sort of comment. So comment is some sort of a message for the reader, right? So for example, you can say print hey you, and you want like the reader know that what you are trying to do here. So you can say this line prints you, prints hey you, right? By the way, this is this is not a good comment, right? As you move move towards like a programming languages and try to learn more stuff, you will realize that this is not a good comment, because the comment should actually say something that is not clear by the code itself. But the code itself is really clear here, right? It's like print something. But I'm just trying to help you understand that this line, which started with sharp, means that the code ignored this part, right? So you can put it here, or you can put it in the one line in the beginning of the line, or you can put it in line with another code, right? And whatever you put after that, it doesn't understand. So you can say, okay, print something new. And the computer doesn't print something new, because this is after the sharp. So if I put it here, right? And if I do the print something new, I can see that it prints hey you, and then it's going to print the next line, which is something new, right? And don't worry about these spaces. You can put spaces, or you can just put them next to each other. But usually we prefer to put spaces in some cases to make sure that it is more readable to the user, right? Because if I have like 100 lines of code here next to each other, it might be really hard for the user to go through it. So that's why, for example, for part like in this tutorial, maybe you can see like sometimes we have some sort of lines of code, and then we have like one blank line and nothing, and then we continue the stuff here. Perfect. So let's get back to our slides. Let's see if I can do the slideshow again. Perfect. So we talked about the print, we talked about the comments, and now we want to talk about like the size and how it works, right? So we want to see how we can change this, because then we want to do like this drawing in this like set of tutorials. We want to create a window for us, right? Like for example, like a paper. Like, what is the size of my paper? Is it like a A3, A4, right? Something like that. So, but in computer, we need like to define something, right? So we need to define like the width and the height. So for example, we can say this is like the width of my window, this is the height of my window, and we'll see shortly how we can use it in our notebook. So the code is simple, because this is about the setting of the window. We are going to use the setup part. So we use the setup, and we try to change the size there. Perfect. Now here, this is like for the draw part, and we have, for example, rectangular, right? So this rect is something that is already written and like made by some other people. So it is ready to use. So you can just use rect and open the parentheses, and you need to provide 4 numbers, right? So you need to provide just 1 point, a corner, which is top left, right? So we have X, Y, right? And we will see what like how we understand like what X, Y is here shortly. And then we have the width and height, which is again the width and height of the rectangle, right? So we have the setup size, we have this height, we have again the rectangle, which is, again, it has this height, but it also has X and Y. So now let's see how we can do that in our notebook. So I'm going to get back to my notebook here, and I'm going to do it here. So I'm going to def setup, right? And I'm going to do size for example, like the same number. I think it was 80, 800, 600. And you can see something happen. So like there's a big window here. And the problem here is that, okay, so I cannot see like actually what's happening. I don't know like where the window is because all of them are black. So I'm going to use background. We'll talk about that later, but I'm just trying to show you how you can see the window, right? I just wanted to show you the window, but don't worry about the background. I will talk about that. This is just a way to change the color. That's it. So nothing serious. So for example, 125, I will talk about these numbers, okay? Don't worry. This is just a way to show you. Okay, so you can see now the window. It was white before, so that's why you didn't notice that. So now you can see I have this window. This is the window that we're going to do a stuff there. So for example, you can put the rectangle there, you can draw something there, right? So I can also, for example, say I have the rectangle, and this is 0, 0, 100, 100, right? It creates a rectangle, right? So the thing here is that this 0 and 0, when you put 0 and 0 here, it matches with the 0 and 0 of the window. And the 0 and 0 of the window is on the top left corner. So this is how the computer reads. The computer assumes that this part is the 0 and 0, right? For this function, size, and rectangle, right? For example, if I want to keep the x's, or change the y, for example, let's say I want to change the y to 10. So now you see, I push it down, right? This is the y. For example, if I put 50, it moves down. This is the y direction. But if I want to move it to the right, I have to change the x's because this is how it moves. So you can see this top corner of the rectangle, which is in this case is a square, but I'm going just to change it to rectangle so you can better see. Perfect. So now you can see this top left corner is at 50 and 50, right? With respect to this point on the top left corner of the window, the blue purple window, right? And this black rectangle had a width of 100, right? And the height is 150, right? I can put height 200 and make it really long, right? So this is the way that you can draw things. So, but by the way, maybe I said something by mistake. When I said like when you want to draw something, I basically means that like you want to perform like something that run again and again. So we'll talk about that. So this is some sort of like a setting that you want to put here, and then as we'll discuss later, you can use like the draw something to write some stuff here, right? That works with the stuff that you provided in the setup. So we'll talk about that shortly, don't worry. But this is just the basics for now. So let's get back to our slides. But if you have any questions, you can let me know or let us know in the chat to see so you can just help to understand the materials, right? So this is like another thing that you can use, like circle. So this is rect for rectangle. This is for the circle, right? So for the circle, we usually need the center, right? X, Y, and we need the diameter, right? What happened to that slide? Okay, did I miss that? Okay, so let me. I don't know. I think it got deleted. Okay, but that's okay. I'm just going to draw it here. So let's say I don't want a rectangle. I want to create a circle, right? So for the circle, we need a center. I put it at 0 and 0, and I provide, for example, a diameter of 50. Now you may ask, okay, if I put the center at 0 and 0, that means I'm putting the center of the circle exactly on the top left corner of the window, right? So if you see this window, I'm going to provide on the top left of the corner, right? So I'm going to uncomment this because if it was commented, you see, the computer doesn't recognize this. But if I remove the comment, this sharp sign, now it is a line of code that the computer needs to run, right? So the computer knows that it has to go through this and run it. So now I put their center exactly on the top left, and the diameter is 100. So you can see this is my window. So if I put my center here and draw a circle, what do you think we should see? Not the whole circle, but just a quarter of it, right? It's interesting, right? But now, for example, let's say I put the center at 200 to the right, 200 down, and now you see, you can see the full circle because then we have the diameter of 100. It is totally fine. Does that make sense? Perfect. So if you have any questions, just I'm going just to go back to the slides. Perfect. So if you can, it would be a good idea to do things on your end as well if you have time. So as I go through like the stuff, and then if you have, for example, your notebooks open, you can write some sort of lines of code and see what's going on, right? You can play with it. So this is like different types of rectangle. So we have like a rectangle, we have fill rectangle. We just fill it with a color, but remove like the border, right, or the outline. But for example, for the rect, we have like the color, and we also have the outline, and we have also a stroke rect, which is just like an empty rectangle, like doesn't have any color, but you can see like the border or the outline, right? But how to change these colors, we'll talk about that. Don't worry. But these are like different ways you can change the rectangle. So I'm going just to go back to my notebook so you can see. Here, for example, that stroke even works for the circle. So if I put a stroke, for example, circle, right? You see, it's actually like without any filling color. So the color of the background actually is inside the circle, right? But if I remove the circle, I see fill circle. And now since the color is black, you cannot notice like the outline probably that much, because you should see, you shouldn't see the border here, but you should see the border here. But since this is black and the border is also black, or the outline is black, you cannot see the difference. But that's okay, we'll talk about it later. I just wanted to show you that how it works. So for example, I can also do fill rectangle, right? At, for example, 0 and 0, and see how it goes. So I have a rectangle here, and I have another circle here, right? So let's go back to our slides. I'm going to do a slideshow. Interesting, I can see it here right now. Right here. Okay, so we talk about this, right? And now one of the things here is that we want, like, for example, put one circle exactly like in the corner that touches like the top and the left side, right? But how can we do that? So if you notice, I don't have like any, I don't think if I can edit this because I don't have any pen here. Do I have any pen? Let's see, I don't think, but I'm going just to explain it here for you guys. So if you have like the diameter, right, for example, 100, right? So you know that from top to the bottom of the circle and to the left to the right side of the circle is 100, right? So if you want like to touch the top and the left side, you want to make sure that from top to the center and left to the center is half of the diameter, right? Which is the radius. So when diameter is, for example, 100, you want to put the XY at exactly half of it, so 50. So
for the quick questions, we're going to put up a poll first before you go through the solution of the
okay
question. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Okay, so I don't know about the poll, but do you want like to create a poll yourself? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So okay, so 56% answer the questions. 30, okay. I'm getting there. By the way, guys, the question is different than what I explained, okay? So it's a little bit different.
I'll close it in about 15 seconds if you haven't answered.
Okay.
You should be good to go through now.
Okay, perfect. So guys, if you read the question, it says a radius of 50, right? It doesn't say a diameter of 50, right? So the radius is 50. So the radius is 50. The value that I'm going to put here is 100, right? But since the radius is 50, so you need just to go one radius to the right, one radius to the left, right? So if you put like your center, exactly, I'm going just to zoom in a little bit so maybe you can see. Okay, it doesn't work like this, and I have no idea why. But I'm going to show it on the notebook so you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to remove this rectangle here. Now, if you put the field at 0 and 0, right? And if you provide like, sorry, put the radius as 100 and 100 and 100. Sorry, 50, which is the rate. The radius is 50, so the diameter is 100. So now if I do this, it becomes here, right? So you see, this is like the value for the x and y. This is the diameter. So if I want to make sure that it touches the top, the top and the left side, so I should put 50 and 50. I know that this is the diameter, so I still know that the radius is still 50, right? So if I do that, now you can see that it's the top left. So let's get back to our slides. And go to the next section. So this is like a color, like how we can define color, right? So in computer, the computer understands what the color is with either a string, right? On the right side, you can see we have like the red. You can just put the word red, or put the word green, or put the word blue, right? Or we can use 3 different values, and each corresponds to a particular color, and those colors are red, green, and blue. So in computer, we call that RGB, right? So these values must be between 0 and 255. So if you want to know why it should be between that, so you can just try to study some technical stuff like binary, because we're not going to go through that. But if you're interested, you can just easily search Google and you can probably find plenty of stuff about that. But just what we need to know is that we need to provide 3 numbers, and this shows how much is the amount of color we need to create a particular color, right? So for example, if you provide, for example, 255 for blue, most of like the color would be blue, right? Like the blue has a more impact on the color. So let me show that in the screen with the fill style here. So I'm going to remove the background, right? So still we have the window, but you don't see it because the background of the window is white. Now I'm going to use fill style, right? By the way, in programming, it is important to make sure that you are using either like the lowercase or like the capital letters, because it is important, because the computer may understand fill style, but doesn't understand, for example, even this fill style, right? You want to make sure that you write the exact command, right? So if I do fill style and I provide, for example, the color red, right? And see the result. Perfect. Now you can see there is an outline here, right? Again, I can remove the outline by doing fill circle. So I want to fill it, but I don't need the outline, right? So you don't see any black like border here. So now let's go back to our circle with the outline. I have fill style. I told you that another way to like the computer know that you want to use the color is the RGB. So the first is for red, right? So I can say, hey, computer, use a lot of red and nothing green or blue, right? You see, it's the same, right? But now if I, for example, put some sort of blue there, let's say I want to use the same amount of blue as well, right? So this is the combination of red and blue, right? So you can create a lot of colors by just changing the values of R and or G and or B, so RGB, right? So feel free to play with it and try to create different colors. But if I want, for example, to create like a full just blue, I can just put 265, 55 blue, right? Perfect. By the way, what happens if I put 0 and 0 and 0, do you think? So this is the beginning, right? This is like the black. You are using nothing. But what if you use everything? The opposite of the black is white, right? So you should see white here. So you see we have the border, but we don't have anything, right? Inside it. So let me go back to our slides. Perfect. So background is again the same as the fill style. The fill style was for color. The background is for the whole window, and we use it already, right? So the same thing is for background. So you have again 3 colors. So the style is the same, but you have to use another like command. So it is background. The previous one was for, yeah, sorry. Is anyone having a question? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So it's again the same command. So I'm going to skip this part, but feel free to play with it to create different background colors, right? So for now, I'm just going to go back to my notes and use the same background that I used before, or maybe just, I don't know, maybe yellow. How about yellow? Just 125, 125, for example, right? It's not completely yellow, but if I put just 255, 155. Yeah, nice. So let's move on. Again, background is for whole background for the entire window, right? And fill style is applies like to the particular like a shape that you want like to draw, right? So this is exercise 1. So we're going to ask you to create a Calgary Tower. So again, if you cannot like remember like the exact like order of the red, green, blue, don't worry about the color, right? So provide some maybe different colors or whatever you like. But the whole idea is to do some sort of exercise to understand how to work with this stuff. So I think Pooja should take you to the breakout room, right? Perfect. So I'm going to see you shortly in about 10 or 15 minutes. Perfect. So let me stop sharing here. So Pooja, just let me know if everyone gets back here, okay? Because we have 14 participants right now, I think.
I think they should be all brought back in about 30 seconds.
Sorry, guys, I accidentally left because my computer crashed. Did anything happen? within the last like 2 minutes?
No, you are all good.
All right, thanks. I'll just get my background up as well.
I think everyone should be back.
Perfect. So awesome. So hey guys, I hope that like you enjoyed the breakout time. So we're going just to continue here. I'm going just to share my screen, but this time I'm going to go through on my notebook because we don't have that much time. So I prefer just to say my notebook and talk about the stuff. So let's see. I hope that everyone can see my screen right now. So here, if you want like to create like a tower, right? So we start, for example, at the bottom, right? So you know that like the size, for example, of your window is 600, 800, right? So 600, 800 this is like, for example, for the width, this is for the height. So if you want to start, for example, at the center, you know that the center of your rectangle at the bottom should be 300. So I can put 300, right? And then, so let's forget about like the height and everything. But I know that if the center is 300, I don't want the center. What I want is what? The top left corner, right? Don't forget that the X and Y of the rectangle was the top left corner. So I can say my corner is not 300. It's 300, for example, minus half of, for example, the width of my rectangle. So if my width of the rectangle is 100, I can say it is 300 minus 50, which is 250, right? And then for the height, I know that if I go 800 down, this will be my height. So I want to start at 800, but not 800 exactly, because 800 is at the bottom, right? I want to go a little bit above that. And that is like the width of my rectangle, right? As the height of my rectangle. So if my height of the rectangle is, for example, let's say 25, for example, right? I want to start 800 minus 25 or 775, for example, right? And this is 25 here. So if I draw this and I use the color red, you should see a background and rectangle, right? So this is the center, but I don't need the center. I want to provide this point for the X and Y here. So you can do the rest on your own later, or ask like mentors on the Discord. So I need to move to the other stuff. So now we want to discuss variable. So what is variable? So variable, you can think of it as empty box. So you have an empty box. You can put different values there, right? You can put a value, and then you can take that value and change it with another value, right? You can add some value to it. So you can update it. So for example, if someone asks you, what is your height? And you say, hey, my height is 6 feet, for example, right? And then maybe next year, you become like taller, right? And then someone asks you, what is your height now? So you say, yeah, my height is, for example, 6 feet, I don't know, like 12, right? This is just a variable. So you can say my height is, for example, I don't know, 100, and then I'm going to change it to 150, right? So you can define a variable with some sort of a letter or a word. For example, here I can use height, I can use X as my variable, right? And then I can say print X, right? I can use print, for example, let's see, for example, I can put height here, and I can print height, right? And now you can see that is important to provide the quotation. So if I say print height, the computer doesn't understand that that is a variable that just holds a value. So this like variable has this value 100, right? But if I put single quotation or double quotation, the computer doesn't understand. You can understand this is just a word that you want to print. So if I do that, you just print height, right? This is the exact thing that the computer prints. But if you remove the quotation, it prints its value. right? It assumes that this is a variable, and the variable has some sort of value. It provides that value. So now it prints 100. So what is this thing? We call that a string. So this is a string. This is a string. So this is a string. A string is just a sentence or a word in programming. So instead of saying that this is a word, or this is a sentence, or this is a letter, we use just a term a string for that. So a string is any type of thing like value that is enclosed by quotation, right? And for the value, we have different type of values. For example, we may have integers. Integers are just some numbers like 1, 2, 3, -5, 0, 6, right? All of them are integers, right? Some of them are negative, some of them are positive. But this is not the only value, like the type of value that we have. Sometimes we have decimals. For example, the price of the gas is $1, I don't know, 30 cents or 35 cents, for example, right? This is this is like this decimal value, but we call it float. So this is float, right? But how can you know if it is like an integer or float? Either you know, like if you remember things, you know that this is like has a decimal point, so it is float. If it is just 1, you know it is integer, right? I can also do type of x, right, to see if it's actually true. So x is 1, but what is that type of x? It is integer. You see, int is the short for integer. But if I do, for example, 1.2, now it is float, right? Now if I do or hit the run or do shift enter, I should see the type float. Sounds good? Perfect. So let's get back to our slides and see what else should we cover. So we cover the variable, right? And the variable, as I said, has different types. For example, integer has decimal, which we call it float, right? Can be a string that we can show it with double quotation or single quotation. But as I said before, in this class, we use double quotation, right? Double quotes, right? So now we also did that we tried like to print something. So we change the height and we print it. Now there are some other ways to print it. So I'm going just to show it to you. So let's do it here. For example, I can say this is height is 100. I can say print the height is. But if you put height, the computer doesn't understand, right? Because it says the height is height. But you need to show that this is a variable. So if you want to show that, I use a curly bracket and put that variable there and just put an F here in the beginning. So you put F, the regard is, and whenever the computer sees a curly bracket, it knows that these things inside it is just a variable. So now it prints the height is 100. So now we have a quick question. And so the question is, if I have the today 13.10, right? What type of value are we assigning to today? So we're going to have a quick poll. So let's see. Float string. Okay. Almost there.
I'll give it 10 more seconds before I close it.
Perfect. So be careful, guys. Here we have the double quotation, right? the double quotes. So whenever you see that, whatever inside it is going to be considered as a string, right? Or if I remove the double quotes, then it's going to be considered as float. But I don't have anything, right? So I noticed that like the 20% of the students like got their correct answer. Good job, guys. So if you didn't pick the correct answer, don't worry, you will learn. It's not that hard. So let's move on. Perfect. So now we want to create some sort of like circles here. So we have, for example, the circle number 1, right? You can see we create some sort of circle, 3 circles, and then I want to move this circle, for example, a little bit, and also we'll move circle number 2 a little bit, right? So I have 2 sets of circles, and I want to move them, right? If I provide some sort of numbers, 100, 100, 100, 155, 100, 200, and write the same numbers for these guys, and then move them, it's going to be a lot difficult, right? Because you have to change a lot of numbers, right? But the variable can help us to reduce like the amount of change that we need to make to change something. So let me show you guys here. So I'm going to, because we don't have time, I'm just going to copy it to show it here to you guys. So I'm going just to remove it and just do that here. And we can see that we have 3 colors. So let me see if I can change them to white. Oops, sorry, the white was 255. 255. Perfect. So now I have 3 circles, right? But now you can see I have to write 100, 100, 100, 155, 100, 220. So there is some relationship, right? So for example, one of the relationships is that you're using the same 100, right? If I want to move this, for example, let's say to the right, I have to change it to 200, 200, 200, right? Or 300, 300, 300. But why should I change all of them? But I know that all of them are the same, right? So I can just create a variable and call it x and do it, for example, 100, and then just use x. Right? So whenever the computer sees the x, it knows that it is the same value 100. So now I can just change x to 300, and now I know that it is moving. You see? So you don't need to change 3 numbers if you can see there is some sort of common between them, right? So that is how we're trying to reduce the amount of change that you need to make to change like your code. Like the variable is really good because it holds the value, and you need just to change the value once, and then you use it again and again. So let's get back to our slides. So operators in computers are just simple arithmetics, like we have addition, we have subtraction, we have multiplication, we have division, and we have modules. So modules is just giving you like a residual value. So for example, if you divide 5 by 2, you get 2.5, right? But the integer, like the quotient, is 2, and the residual is 1, right? So 5, like the modulo of 2, it becomes 1. If you don't know that, that's okay. You can just talk about it later. So don't worry about it. But these 4 like arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, is really common. And programming languages, most of them understand it, right? So if you say 3 plus 4, the computer understands it is 7. So now we want to provide some sort of like a way, like a variable, right, to use to make sure that if we change, for example, d, the diameter, right, then we are going to have the circles always touches like the top and the left. So how can we do that? So we're going to have a quick pause here. Pooja, do you want to? Yeah. So we have like a variable d, right? Let's say d is 100 or 200 or 300. You can change d, right? But you want to use x and y in a way that it always touches the top and bottom. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, perfect. Like more than half of the students got it correctly. Yeah, it is half of the diameter, which is the radius, right? So we should make sure that the x and y are equal to the radius of the circle, not the diameter. And the radius is half of the diameter. So Pooja, can you close the poll, because we have like to move on to the next slides. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going just to see if I can. So we also have a special variables. You don't need to worry about it. This is just a way that the computer understands the movement of mouse. So if you like move your mouse, it understands it, right? So for example, I'm just going to do it on my end so you can see what's going on here. So let me just copy it here and do it here on my end. So I don't want to have an indent in the first line when I want to create the define. I don't want the indent here, but I want indent after it, right? Don't forget that. So here we say that we have the draw, we have the background gray, we have the fill style blue, and we have the, for the rectangle, we don't provide X and Y, but we provide mouse X and mouse Y, which means that the computer now understands the movement of our mouse or our cursor, not the cursor, but the mouse actually. So now it is here, but now if I move my mouse, it follows it. So you don't need to worry about the mouse X and mouse Y, but you have to provide the computer with the exact word, with the exact command like mouse X and mouse Y to understand that you are trying to ask the computer to follow your mouse. So I'm going to stop it because whenever you put the draw, it always runs. So you have like to put the stop here to make sure that it's going to stop. So I think that we're almost done. I just want to make sure that if there's anything left here. Perfect. So we are about to do the exercises. So I'm going to ask Pooja to help you to go to a breakout room to do the exercises, and then you will come back later probably. So thank you guys. I'll see you shortly.